I was assigned to the DeCavalcanti family.
The Sopranos is based on that family.
Yes, it is. There's many similarities between the show and the real family. We'll start with Tony. There's two events that start this case. In January 14th, I believe it was, 3 individuals decide to rob the World Trade Center, a bank within the World Trade Center, Bank of America. They actually do rob the bank. However, when they come out of the bank, they take their mask off and they're caught pretty quickly. 2 gentlemen are caught that day. The third person fled to New Mexico and was caught within days. The mastermind behind that is a guy named Ralph Guarino. Ralph Guarino saw the walls were starting to cave in, and he decides to call a legendary agent named George Hanna. George Hanna was from Brooklyn, a very street-savvy agent, and he decides to make Ralph a proactive witness, what I just explained. He's going to keep him on the street and make consensual recordings. And that's what we do. We keep Ralph on the street from January of 1998 all the way up until December of 1999. Now, when you have a proactive witness, you never know where he's going to go or who he's going to ingratiate himself into. Where Ralph led us was to the Brooklyn faction of the DeCavalcanti family.
That's who the series, The Sopranos, is based on, that family.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So the DeCavalcantis had a Brooklyn faction, a very violent faction that did all the dirty work for the DeCavalcanti family. So as I said, I graduate from Quantico in May.
This is already going on.
This is already starting to go on. I get assigned just to this surveillance squad, right, during my probationary period, and I'm on this surveillance team. And then in December of that year, December of 1998, which is basically 12 months later where Ralph is being operated, I get assigned to a squad called C10. C10 was responsible at that time for the Bonanno family, and also they had now been responsible for this investigation with Ralph. Since that squad had 2 divisions, the Bonanno family and now being responsible for operating Ralph and the DeCavalcanti family, I was assigned to the DeCavalcanti side of it. So I helped George, the legendary agent that I mentioned there, basically operate Ralph. It's very...
But you're just a rookie.
I'm a brand new agent.
Yeah.
So when you have a proactive witness, the most important thing is keeping him safe, right? We're using a recording device. I can't say what type of device we used, but it's a device you're trying to hide because if the bad guys find out that Ralph is wearing a device, they're going to kill him.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that you have to do, right? George is trying to keep Ralph safe. He's got to gauge his mental health, make sure that he doesn't crack under pressure. He's got to constantly develop ruses so that the bad guys are going to ingratiate himself to him, such as we would sell untaxed cigarettes that the FBI had gotten through a load and basically get them back out there. We would, maybe get a load of TVs that we said were stolen that the FBI maybe had purchased and get them out there. We would gamble that the FBI would control. There was different ruses that we would actually do.
So, because what? I mean, is he allowed to continue to commit crimes while he's cooperating with the FBI? Or is it like, okay, we're going to put you back out there, but you can't commit any crimes? Because that's just silly. Like very quickly they're going to be like you're not making any money. You're not like what's obviously it would look very odd. Or are you saying? Well, go ahead, explain. So
crimes under our control, right, between the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office that we are directing Ralph to do, just like some of the examples that we just gave you.
So it appears that he's still actively a member of this organization or an associate. And is he like an associate or is he actually like
he
a
was an
guy?
associate of the DeCavalcanti family.
Right.
So that's exactly what we're doing. We have to give the appearance that he's still a bad guy because we can't have him working at Starbucks making $9 an hour, right? So we have to do that, right? So that's what we did. We would come up with ruses. We would fence jewelry that we had gotten from the FBI. So there's stolen jewelry, try to get that out there to show them that we were trying to do that. So there's all these ruses that we would constantly do. But there's a lot of administrative work that you have to do behind that. You could have a consensual recording that was 2 hours long that could take 6 hours to listen to because these guys talk in diners, they talk in cars, they talk in clubs, and you're trying to find that nugget of information that you could use for an indictment. So I would be doing that. Nothing is better in court than having a surveillance team take a picture of you and then having a tape as well, and then having a live witness talk about it. So those are the components. We operated Ralph for 2 years. In those 2 years, he probably made 300 consensual recordings. And then, as I said,
That's thousands of hours.
Thousands of hours. So, and we had a team listening to these tapes, trying to transcribe these tapes to give to the attorney's office. In addition to that, we had a surveillance team dedicated to him, where we probably had over 1,000 surveillance logs and tons, hundreds of pictures, trying to ID these people, where we would constantly speak to Ralph as to who that person was, running their plates, trying to find out who the car comes back to. So we, in essence, were identifying members of the DeCavalcanti family. And here you have the New York FBI investigating the Jersey family. And that's how this case starts. The second event that starts this case is 9 days later, January 23rd of 1998, is an individual named Joseph Canigliaro is killed. Joseph Canigliaro was confined to a wheelchair. Now, I know you're probably saying that's pretty ruthless that they killed the guy that was confined to a wheelchair, but he was a DeCavalcanti associate. How he was confined to a wheelchair was back in the 1970s. Him and a DeCavalcanti soldier named James Gallo go to collect loan shark money from a victim. And James Gallo, who was a soldier in the DeCavalcanti family, accidentally shoots Joseph Canigliaro and paralyzes him.
Okay.
No hard feelings between the two.
Right.
Just the cost of doing business. So that's from the 70s. From the 70s up until his death in 1998, he's paralyzed. His own crew killed him. His own crew killed him because he was ruthless, even though he was confined to a wheelchair. This man used to call people over and shoot them from his own wheelchair, and then have his crew basically wrap him up and put them in a tarp and get rid of him. So in the late 1990s, they were just fed up with him and they wanted to kill him, and they actually did kill him. So those are the two events that start this case.
Do they? How do you know he's killed? Do they find the body? Do you?
They found the body, and we're going to get into that as this case starts to progress. But those are the two events that start this case. So as I said, we operate Ralph proactively for almost 2 years, up into December of 1999, and that's when we decide we're going to take down the case. The reason we take down the case is because there started to be whispers as to why hasn't Ralph been arrested. He's the mastermind behind that robbery that I had mentioned had started the case. Everybody else has been arrested that was part of the robbery. Why hasn't Ralph been arrested? And then there becomes whispers like, maybe we should kill him, that he's a rat.
Right. Well, maybe the other guys didn't cooperate.
Well, they didn't, but still, he was the mastermind. It was pretty odd that he wasn't picked up. And as we're going to get into, during that time period, one of the events that we'll discuss later is there was a lot of paranoia that people were cooperating. So they decided that Ralph might be cooperating, and for his safety, we have to take down the case.
Right.
So because of all that evidence that he collected in those 2 years, and as I said, you never know where he's going to take you, we end up arresting 39 people in December of 1999. Now, as we mentioned before, I'm a new agent, right? So I'm on the job now for about a year and a half, or about a year, right? So I get tasked. First of all, as a new agent, you're hoping to be on an arrest team. Second of all, when you're a new agent, you probably get tasked to rear security for your own safety. But because of all the hard work I did and all the grunt work I did, which you're supposed to do as a new agent, that's part of your job, right? You do what you're told. I get tasked to arrest a violent DeCavalcanti soldier named Anthony Capo from Staten Island, who had a horrible reputation with law enforcement. Very ruthless guy, supposed to have killed numerous people. Every interaction with him with law enforcement was extremely hostile. So I was very surprised that I was going to be the team leader to go arrest him.
I feel like somebody else can do this.
Right. So I had watched George operate Ralph for 2 years, always treating him with respect. And I decided that I was going to approach Anthony, regardless of his ruthless reputation, the same way.
Right.
So I studied Anthony like you would study for a test. I wanted him to know that I knew everything about him. So I formulated my team. When you go do an arrest, you basically have to find out who's living in the house, to make sure that who's living downstairs, that they're not a want for them. So I did all the checks, everything. And that day I went to go arrest him. When I went to go arrest him, all the planning that I had did went out the window because he wasn't there.
Okay.
Knocked on the door, spoke to his wife. His wife told me that he was at his mom's house. So, as I said, all the planning out the window.
Is he at the mom's house? Was he? I was going to say.
I went to his mom's house, and he was at his mom's house.
Oh, nice.
Everything that I heard about him, about being ruthless, nasty, horrible reputation, what I witnessed between him and his family was totally different. They seemed to have this loving relationship amongst themselves. So that threw me for a loop. So when I went to go arrest him and got him dressed and everything.
Everybody needs a good pair of jeans. What I like about the Perfect Jean is that the moment you put them on, they feel like sweatpants. They don't ever pinch or bind up. As a matter of fact, they're super stretchy. There's never any point where you feel like they're binding up on you, or they're tight, or they pinch you or anything like that. They're comfortable in pretty much any position that you sit in. They're really great. They're comfortable and they look great. And the best part is our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjeans.nyc or Google The Perfect Jeans and use promo code COX15 for 15% off. Normally, a good pair of jeans costs anywhere between $150 to $200, but The Perfect Jeans are reasonably priced at $79.99. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc and use promo code COX15 for 15% off. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code COX15. Please support our channel and tell them we sent you. F your khakis. Get the Perfect Jean.
He comes out and he's wearing a Dallas Cowboy jacket. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, right? And the Cowboys, I hate the Cowboys. So that's the first thing that turned me off, right? So we started to have a banter about that, which was good. I read him his rights. So he invoked his right to counsel, his right to remain silent. That's exactly what I wanted him to do. Now, there's a couple things that you have to do when you go arrest someone. There's the pedigree information that you have to ask from the U.S. Marshal Service, the forms you have to fill out. So that's his date of birth, his wife's names, children's names, everything. I would ask him questions, and this is when I started the mind chest, where I would ask him these questions. Before he could answer, I would actually answer the question for him, letting him know that I knew everything about him,
Right.
like his date of birth, age 1761, everything like that. His wife's name, his kids' names, his cell phone number, his address, car, plate number, everything. So he's looking at me like, this kid knows a lot more than I think he knows.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what I wanted him to do. Then at that particular time, he was charged with 2 crimes. One crime was the conspiracy to murder Charlie Majuri, who was an acting panel boss for the DeCavalcanti family. Another charge was mail fraud, which was going to lead to stock fraud. So I said to him, now again, he had invoked his right to counsel and his right to remain silent. At that point, I can't ask him legally any questions.
Right.
Doesn't stop me from making statements. So I told him, I'm going to say a couple of things to you. Do not say anything. Just listen to me. So the first thing I said to him was, okay, you wanted to kill Charlie Majuri. Your plan was to ring his doorbell and shoot him in the face. The reason that you didn't do that was because there was a cop on the block because he lived on a cul-de-sac. And I said, don't say anything. Just think about that. Now, that was a hard truth.
Mm-hmm.
I got that from a consensual recording. So you got to put yourself in his shoes. 6 o'clock in the morning, he doesn't know who the witness is, and I gave him a hard truth. We all know you don't lie to these guys. You lie to them, you're done, right? That's the first thing I did. Then I talked to him about the mail fraud. Remember back in the day, you could rent a mailbox and it would say suite?
Yeah.
And you thought that you had this nice building. You had a nice building, like an office within a building.
Had many suites.
Right? So it's the second thing. I said, that was really cute, right? And then I talked to the driver of the car, who was a buddy of mine. Just let him food for thought. Just let him think about things. So then he's thinking about things, and he says to me, he goes, we knew you were coming. And I'm like, shit. And when you have an arrest, you have to call into the operations center and say that you have your target. And I started to hear a lot of people weren't at their houses, so they knew we were coming. It ended up, and we'll get to this, that we had a problem. There was a leak in the Southern District.
Oh, okay. It wasn't Ralph. It was
Yeah.
an agent. Is this an agent, or
No,
you're going to tell me?
It was a court reporter, an alleged court reporter was feeding information to the mob.
Oh no, that's
Yeah,
an
that was
issue.
a problem. So that's what he says, right? So we established that bond that day, and he hadn't been arrested in a long time, so he didn't know about pretrial and how the process worked. And we spent a lot of time together that day. I had to meet his stepfather. Another thing was he was a diabetic. So I made sure that I had chocolate and orange juice with me that day in case his blood sugar got low and I didn't want him to pass out in front of me, right?
Mhm.
So he saw that, he appreciated that, and I treated him like a human being that day. And he said to me months later, that's the first time law enforcement treated him like a human being. Now, I think I told you before that from our side, all I ever heard was that the interaction was hostile. It's a two-way street. What he was telling me, all his interaction was hostile. So he was giving it to law enforcement was giving it to him. This is the first time that he said someone treated him with respect. That eventually would play out in a good way for me. So we spent the day together. I had to meet his stepfather again to give him money that he had on him. He found out later that I treated his stepfather with respect. During the bullpen, when we had all the defendants together, he was getting a little bit too chatty with me.
Mhm.
And I kind of told him, step back a little bit because the other guys are seeing you're being very friendly with me. They're going to get the wrong impression.
Right.
So he said, thank you, because I was trying to look out for him.
Right.
So we spent the day together, treated him with respect. I'm new. Just think I'm trying to do my job. Thought nothing of it. About a week later, a Thursday night, I get a phone call. His lawyer calls me and says that he wants to play ball. I almost fell off my chair.
You didn't expect that?
Didn't
I mean, he's
expect-
looking at a life sentence.
No. At this point in time, he's looking at 20 years.
It's conspiracy to commit murder for a guy. Oh, but the guy didn't get killed?
He get killed.
Oh.
So he's looking between 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I'll do it. I'll do it 20.
Yeah.
That's enough for me.
Yeah.
yeah. So he decides he wants to cooperate. Now, unbeknownst to me, right, this no-made member in this family's 100-year history had ever cooperated before.
Okay.
He calls, lawyer calls. I know less is more. I'm a brand new agent. I don't want to say too much at all. I said, thank you. We're going to get back to you. I immediately called the assistant. She's a seasoned assistant. She's the one that did the indictment.
Assistant U.S. Attorney.
Yep. Her name is Maria Barton. She's nervous because what did I say? Because I'm a new agent. I said, I didn't say too much. I said I was going to call you.
Right.
So now we start, let's get a proffer together, right? So that's what we do. The first step is a proffer where we have Anthony Capo, his attorney, George Hanna, the legendary agent I discussed, Kenny McCabe, a legendary Southern District investigator, Maria Barton, and myself. And we have a meeting where we have a proffer. And the rules of the proffer is, as long as you do not lie, we cannot use your words against you. That's the big thing. If you lie, and what I mean by that is, if you were to take the stand and lie on the stand, then they can call me to the stand and dispute what you said during that proffer.
Right.
But as long as you don't lie, you are protected.
Do most of the proffers usually carve out, like, if you end up, like, with the exception of a murder, like if you tell us, oh, I murdered 14 people, then we are going to charge you.
No. You are protected by the terms of a proffer as long as you do not lie.
Right. What is that, like queen for a day? They got
That's a slang term, queen for a day.
Okay.
Right? Now what you're doing is, right, you're proffering in hopes of getting a cooperation agreement.
Right.
So we're going to have a proffer. Now a proffer is a very dicey thing because you're being removed from prison and you're meeting secretly with the government. And the bad guys are going to question, why are you being removed from prison, right? Do you have a status conference? Were you put on the bus for a reason? So you can't be half pregnant, right? It's like if you're going to do this, you have to do it 100%. and his lawyer prepped him really, really good. So he comes in and he tells us three things. He tells us there's a leak in the Southern District. He doesn't know who it is, but the information was gotten from Fritzie Giovanelli, a Genovese captain who provided the information to the DeCavalcanti family, right? I don't want to fast forward, but years later, Fritzie is basically arrested and convicted and sentenced to 10 years. But we'll get to that. Second thing he tells us is that he's the driver in the murder of a guy named Fred Weiss. Fred Weiss was a businessman from Staten Island who got involved with the Gambino family. So months prior, I'm reading books about organized crime. Here I am listening live to Anthony Capo tell me that John Gotti ordered the murder of Fred Weiss. The reason, well, first of all, Fred Weiss was killed on 9/11/1989. Horrible day. You all know when you talk about 9/11. The reason he was killed is because he got involved with John Gotti in the waste business. Fred Weiss should not have got involved with John Gotti. John Gotti should not have got Fred Weiss. The Fred Weiss murder is probably the most indictable mob murder ever. At least 15 people have either pled guilty or have been convicted of that murder because it was a race between the Gambino family and the DeCavalcanti family to kill him. The DeCavalcantis, back in the late 1980s, were trying to ingratiate themselves to the Gambino family. John Gotti wanted Fred Weiss killed. Fred Weiss was arrested in June of 1989. Fred Weiss made the mistake of changing lawyers. Because he changed lawyers, John Gotti thought he was cooperating. He was not cooperating. This man was killed out of pure paranoia.
Right.
So because Gotti wanted him killed, it became a race between these two families. We have testimony years later of our witnesses discussing that they saw both families doing surveillance. When I say surveillance, meaning trying to get patterns of Fred Weiss, where he lived, where he worked, what time he was leaving those locations.
Yeah, he goes to this cafe every day at 10
Exactly.
o'clock.
Of doing surveillance, of seeing both families driving by doing surveillance on him.
Right.
So horrible. But it's probably the most indictable mob murder ever, where at least 15 people have pled guilty or have been convicted of this. So that's the second thing he tells us, that he's the driver in this murder. Vincent Palermo was the shooter, and James Gallo, the same guy that shot Joseph Canigliaro and paralyzed him, was the other shooter. The third thing he does, or tells us, is that he is the shooter in the John D'Amato murder. John D'Amato was the acting boss of the DeCavalcanti family in 1991. We'll get into the similarities between the Sopranos and the real-life family, but one of the reasons why John D'Amato was killed is because his girlfriend comes forward and tells Anthony Capo that John D'Amato is taking her to sex clubs in New York City and he's having sex with men. To each his own, I don't care.
Right.
But that was one of the reasons that he was killed. And as you know in the
It's not
show,
okay. Yeah, it's not okay.
as
Right.
Anthony Capo said, you can't have a leader of men trying to do this.
Yeah.
So, and as you know in The Sopranos, that's one of the angles in the show is the gay angle.
I forget the guy's name. He's a short little chubby guy.
right.
Oh, I forget his
Yeah.
name.
But he is the shooter in that. So those are the three things that he tells us out of the gate. So we have to huddle and decide, is he telling us the truth?
Well, it seems like that's a hell of a thing to say if it's not the truth,
Well,
right?
Well, what you had just said there before, he's gone now from going from 20 to 30 years to exposing himself to a life sentence.
Right.
And I always say numbers are better than letters. So now he's exposed to life. So we agree that he's telling us the truth. So that sets a whole bunch of things in motion. The thing that he tells us too is he didn't put John D'Amato in his burial spot. He shot him, but he was believed to be buried up in Marlborough, New York, at Phil Lamella's recycling plant. Phil Lamella was a DeCavalcanti soldier. So when someone tells you when a body is buried, you have to act upon it very quickly because the bad guys might move it. So a couple of things are put in motion now. We believe that he's telling us the truth, so we're going to have to move Anthony, and then we're going to have to do a search of Phil Lamella's place.
Yeah. Does that? Yeah. So because that puts him in danger, right?
Mhm.
He knows there's only so many people that know where that body is buried. So, okay.
Now, again, he didn't put him there, but he knows that that's where he's supposed to be.
So when you say you have to be moved, I mean, are you taking him out of, because I'm assuming at this point he's like in the U.S. Marshals holdover. So you're taking him out of the Marshals holdover and you place him in another, is he going in, is this witness protection? Or are you just taking him out completely and saying, hey, we're going to put you in a hotel. We'll just put a couple guys with you.
Okay, so the witness security program is run by the U.S. Marshal Service. Yes. He is in a federal facility. I think at that point in time he was in MCC in Lower Manhattan, from what I remember. And what we're going to do is we're going to move him to another local facility. I'm not going to say where. We just move him to another facility.
Okay.
So that's what we did really quickly, right? And because we have to assess that he's telling us the truth, and then we're going to go get a search warrant to go to Philomella's place. So that weekend, I'm working with the assistant to put together the search warrant. And where Philomella's area was, I had to go to the Northern District of New York. It was upstate New York. At the same time, during this whole thing, is my dad is dying. He had brain cancer. So I'm dealing with a lot personally, and also trying to deal with work. Crazy time in my life.
How many hours a week are you working on a squad like this?
Well, to kind of get my mind off my dad as well, I was probably working 6 days a week, probably 12 to 14-hour days.
Okay,
so, a lot.
And you're married?
At this time, no.
Okay,
I was not married.
Then you're lucky because no wife's going to put up with that.
Yeah. So we decide he's telling us the truth. We move him. We speak to his family. His family doesn't want to move. Became a problem for us. Him and his wife were not getting along that well at that time anyway, but still it creates a problem. We go and we do a search warrant then. As I said, he didn't put the body there. It turns out the area was a very vast area. Also, the wrinkle too was that Philomela had changed the area. He rebuilt his facility. So we didn't find the body there when we went to go search. The place was rebuilt. And, we came up with nothing. We were there for 3 days, I believe. But again, it was a huge area to actually search.
Right. It's like an acre, 2 acres?
At least.
Okay.
It's the size of at least two football fields. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I've been blessed in my career. I think I found we located 5 victims, throughout my career, which we can talk about as we go on. But yeah, we didn't find a body that time. And I remember the third day when we decided to wrap things up, I went to go see my dad that night. My mom's a very religious person, and me and my brother were going to go home, and she told us to stay. And actually, my dad had passed that night. Very, really strange. And, we had the wake a couple of days later, and I'm at the wake, and Anthony Capo called me at the wake. Very strange, to offer his condolences. And meanwhile, a couple of days later, I'm actually looking for a body that he had put there. So that was really strange. So anyway, to kind of fast forward, so he's the first made guy to flip in that family. Now, as we said, we proffer him, right? We're going to continue to do that in hopes of getting a cooperation agreement. So I have to debrief him his 30 years of criminal history. This guy did a lot in those 30 years.
Right.
Home invasions, which is a despicable crime, right? That's when you go into someone's house, you tie them up, and you steal everything within their house. And these guys did a lot of types of ruses too, where they would dress up as cops, postal service to try to get into the house. Horrible stuff. So we start to do that January, February, March of 1999 now, of 2000 now, right? And who comes forward? Vincent Palermo, who is the acting boss. Now, Anthony Capo reported to Vincent Palermo, soldier reporting to the boss. The reason that happened was because Anthony was so hard to control. So now Vincent Palermo comes forward and he wants to cooperate. So now we have a soldier, first
the
made
dominoes
guy.
are falling.
The dominoes are starting to fall. We have Anthony Capo, first made member to ever cooperate, and now Vincent Palermo, acting boss of the DeCavalcanti family, wants to cooperate. And now we have to do the same thing, bring him into proffer, and we start to do the same process there. In April, the next month, we go arrest a guy named Victor Di Chiara. Victor is an associate in the family. He was part of the conspiracy to murder Charlie Majuri as well. So he lived in Long Beach, New York. So I go arrest him. And when I go arrest him, we arrest him on the conspiracy to murder Charlie Majuri. Now, he also was the driver in the John D'Amato murder. That's the murder that Anthony Capo shot John D'Amato. He was the driver. During that murder, Victor basically told Anthony Capo, shoot him again. So when I went to go arrest Victor, I told him, you're being charged with the conspiracy to murder Charlie Majuri, but you got bigger problems. I said, you basically told someone to shoot him again. And his face just went white. He knows he has a problem.
Mm.
Before we got back to 26 Federal Plaza, he was on board. So now we have Ralph that started the case, an associate, Anthony Capo, soldier, Vincent Palermo, acting boss, and now Victor. So now we have 4. We do the same thing with Victor. We proffer to a cooperation agreement. So in June of 2000, I'm done proffering Anthony Capo, and he pleads guilty. I think it was June 4th of 2000. Remember I told you Anthony was charged with 2 crimes? When he pleads guilty, he ends up pleading guilty to 2 murders, 11 murder conspiracies, extortions, every crime you can actually think of.
Mm-hmm.
And he's exposed to a life sentence.
But he's been cooperating and given you a ton of stuff.
Yes, but until he's sentenced, you don't know what you're going to get,
Right.
right? We do the same thing with Vinny, and we do the same thing with Victor. I think Victor pled in August, and I know Vinny pled in October. So we take all their information, and we want to have an indictment. And I think it's October of 2000, October 19th of 2000, we have the hierarchy indictment, where we're going to arrest the leadership of the DeCavalcanti family. Now, again, keep in mind, this is the New York FBI taking down the Jersey family.
Mm-hmm.
So on October 19th of 2000, we arrest the official boss, John Riggi, who's in jail, the consigliere, Steve Vitale, who I go arrest myself. We have captains and soldiers, a very significant arrest. I think we arrest like 13 people altogether, like the leadership of the family. We also arrest a soldier, an associate named Frankie the Beast Scarabino. Why that's important? Because Frankie the Beast comes forward and he wants to cooperate. So we have another associate. What's important about him is the information that he's going to tell us. Things got real really, really quickly. You want to know why? Because he tells us that he's got the contract to kill Anthony Capo, to kill Anthony Capo's wife, his kids, and to hurt law enforcement, to kill law enforcement. Now, I said this got real really quickly because I'm the one that flipped Anthony Capo.
Right.
So they wanted to go back to their old Sicilian ways of hurting law enforcement, which has been off the table forever.
It doesn't, yeah.
The only time that
It brings so much heat on them, it's
Right.
not worth it.
the only time that they ever took action was when they shot Keith Chioda's sister in the 90s. That's the only time that they ever did that. But they wanted to go back to their old Sicilian ways of doing this. The contract came from a DeCavalcanti captain named Frank Polizzi. He was arrested that day as well, thank God. And thankfully, Frank Scarabino had a moral compass where his line was, where he told us, was killing kids. He wasn't going to act upon that. And you can just tell by his name, Frankie the Beast, that this guy was a capable person and was good with his hands. I still speak to him today, by the way. But he came forward and he decided that he wanted to cooperate. And now we have him. So he comes on board, and thankfully that doesn't happen. You can just imagine me having to go up to Anthony Capo in a prison and tell him that there was a contract on him and his family. I didn't know, because we were scattered so scarcely at this time, and I would be remiss to mention this. Remember I mentioned that half the squad was working on the Bonanno family? Well, they were rocking and rolling at that point in time too. They were starting to dismantle the Bonanno family at that time. And one of the reasons why I wrote the book, Flipping Capo, How the FBI Dismantled the Real Sopranos, is because this squad, C10, such a unique squad, we were dismantling 2 families at the same time. And we got great press for years, but the press never put it together that it was the same squad.
Okay.
So because we were so scattered, I had to go up to speak to Anthony myself. And I didn't know how he was going to react. And all my interaction with Anthony was very good, very calm, but I never saw that real switch of him flip. And it was a very emotional day when I had to go tell him, and I didn't know how he was going to react. And, you can just picture him. He's defenseless. I'm his only source to the outside world, so he's leaning on me to protect his family. So we immediately went to go speak to his family again, his wife, kids, who were younger. And again, she refused to move. And I was like, this is a real threat, because not only were we getting it from Frank Scarabino, we were very close to the Italian authorities in Italy, and they were intercepting these words on their wiretaps. They were getting information. So this was legitimate. This was real. But she wouldn't move. She eventually ended up moving from one end of Staten Island to the other, which is pointless.
Right.
And thankfully, she never got hurt. But she really put me in a tough light of trying to protect her. But thankfully, Frank Scarabino came forward and decided not to act upon this, and the threat never came to fruition, thankfully. So as I said, he decides to cooperate, and then about 6 or 7 weeks later, we have a guy named Tommy DeTora come forward. Now, Tommy DeTora was originally arrested in December of 1999 on charges and got bail. But Tommy DeTora was part of the Joseph Canigliaro murder. He was part of his crew that wanted him dead. Tommy DeTora is seeing all these people cooperate because word starts to travel quickly when people are not in jail. We had to move Vinny. We moved Vinny to a safe house where we had to protect him 24/7. Can't say where that was.
Right.
But that took a lot of the Bureau's resources, where it was around the clock, where you had an acting boss at a safe house in an isolated area where we had to protect them around the clock. We had to move Victor to the witness security program too. There's a whole process to get into the program, a polygraph, a background, everything like that. And then this guy, Tommy DeTora, is looking at everybody cooperate, and he decides he wants to cooperate. And he's out on bail, and we decide, let's try to get him together with all the people who participated in the murder of Joseph Canigliaro and give him a recording device and see if they bite.
Right.
And we probably get one of the best consensual recordings the Bureau ever has, where we get all these guys together and they discuss the murder. So we have on tape. Remember I said Joseph Canigliaro was paralyzed?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had his car hooked up that he could actually drive it. So the shooter was Marty Lewis. So we have Marty Lewis on tape saying that I shot Joseph Canigliaro, his nickname was Joe Pitts, shot him 6 times in his car. And I got out of his car, and Joe Pitts drove away, got to the stop sign, and put his blinker on and drove away. We have this all on tape. This is priceless for trial when we hit play.
Mm-hmm.
He stops at a guy named Joseph Brightson's house, who was actually part of the murder conspiracy as well, and beeps his horn. And Joseph Brightson's upstairs thinking that the guy is now dead and has to come downstairs and get in the car with Joe Pitts and drives to the hospital with him. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall at Joseph Brightson's house, where he thinks Joe Pitts is dead, and Joe Pitts arrives at his house and beeps the horn, and he has to come downstairs from the 2nd floor to get in the car with him after he's been shot,
Right.
and drive to the hospital. One of the things that we got on tape that we didn't know was when they went to the hospital, Joseph Brightson called his cousin, who was an NYPD detective, to go to the hospital, and the cousin came and cleaned out the case shells from the car. So that just put his cousin in the soup.
Yeah.
So that's a great consensual recording. What do we do now with all this information? We have more indictments.
Right.
So we have more indictments in April of 2001, more indictments in May. We arrest the cop. He gets arrested. And then in August of 2001, we arrest Fritzi Giovanelli for the leak. So those are all the indictments we have. Then in September of 2001, 9/11, everything comes to a screeching halt, where all our investigations go on hold for several months, dedicated to protecting the country, doing the leads there. Had some crazy stories related to that. Personally, I had a friend who got married a month to the day beforehand, and he worked for a financial company called it was Euro Brokers, I believe, and he passed away that day.
He was in one of the towers?
In one of the towers, and he was only married a month to that day. He got married on August 11th. So he was killed a month later. Actually, I was able to find his vehicle that he drove in that day and find personal belongings, and I was able to give it to his wife. Very, very sad. But that was just a crazy time. We lost an agent that day into the tower. There was an agent who had just retired, who was the head of World Trade Center security, who was there for about a month, and he died that day too. So just really horrible day, and just so surreal too. I do remember that night, we all had to gather together, and then they sent us home, and just driving on the parkway that day, there was no one there. And then come back that night and people cheering you as you went into the pit. And I remember seeing the firemen that day just dazed and confused. And there was a Borders bookstore and the glass was shattered, right? But the top of the glass was still sheared. And these firemen were underneath it. And if that glass had dropped, they would have cut their heads off.
Right.
But they were so dazed and confused. I ran to them and told them, you guys got to move. But they were just so out of it, you know what I mean? But if that glass had fallen, their heads would have been just chopped off. Just really bad times. But as I said, we worked that for a couple of months, and then we finally got back to, trying to work the cases. And then that starts the trials, right? So I think the first trial was in December of 2002. I started a year of trials for me where I had no life whatsoever. When you're on trial, I think the big difference between the state and the feds is that the agents sit at the table as opposed to the state when they don't. And what happens is you have to prep for trial, right? So there's trial prep. You got to determine who you're going to use as a witness for trial. You could be at trial during the day, then you have trial prep at night. So it's constant. It's 24/7. Anthony did a great job. As I said, it was a year of trials. We had the Joe Pitts trial. Then we had a trial in May. Then we had another trial in October. So
How long are these trials?
well, the longest one I had was 2 months. So, and the Joe Pitts trial was about three or 4 weeks. I didn't sit at the table for that one, but I had the witness for that one. I sat at the table for the other two. And then we had another trial. We had there was a blackout then too, back in 2003, where Anthony Capper was actually on the stand when the blackout happened. First of all, we thought the lights just went off in the courthouse, but then it was the East Coast. A crazy story there too is I thought, okay, I might get some free time because there was a blackout and I could get home early. I went to go get my car, and I looked at the parking attendant because I had parked on an outside lot. I looked at the attendant. He looked at me. I gave him my ticket. And then he looked up. He had parked my car on a lift.
Oh, yeah.
So I was screwed. So I had to stay at 26 Federal Plaza that night. And I'll just say the confines of 26 Federal Plaza were not that great. There was a lot of creatures in the walls at night. So I didn't sleep a lick that night.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. When you're not resting well, everything else feels harder. Your focus, your mood, even your recovery. GhostBed is here to help you fix that. They've spent decades perfecting how to build a bed that's comfortable, durable, and designed to actually help you rest. Every GhostBed mattress features premier materials, proven cooling technology, and their exclusive ProCore layer, a targeted support system that reinforces the center of the mattress where the body is heaviest. It helps keep your spine aligned and your back supported, so you can wake up ready for anything 2026 throws at you. Each mattress comes with a 101 night sleep trial and a 20 to 25 year warranty, so you can try it risk-free, knowing it's built to last. Shipping is fast and free. Most orders arrive in 2 to 5 days. GhostBed has great prices to begin with, up to 50% off comparable brands. And Inside True Crime listeners can get an extra 10% off site-wide for a limited time. Just go to ghostbed.com/Cox and use promo code Cox at checkout. That's ghostbed.com/Cox, promo code Cox. Upgrade your sleep with GhostBed, the makers of the coolest bed in the world. Some exclusions apply. See site for details.
I didn't want a rat fall on me. I was trying to sleep. So it was a crazy time. But we, I think all in all, Anthony testified for me 7 times. Anthony Rotundo, he actually decided to cooperate as well. So he was a captain. So I think we had 7 people cooperate in a 2-year time period. He testified 7 times as well. All in all, I think we had 71 defendants that were convicted, 11 homicides solved, and 7 trials. Now, that doesn't even include the times that Anthony was prepped for trial, where people decided to plead guilty as opposed to going to trial.
What happened with Ralph? What did he end up getting? Because he came in first. He knew he was probably going to be indicted soon, but he came in first and worked for 2 years.
Right. So Ralph, he never had to testify at all.
Okay.
His tapes stood for themselves, and they ended up getting time served. Now, the thing that's interesting, right, and I don't know how your situation had played out, but you never want to rush to get sentenced, right? What a lot of guys want to do is they want to get bail, and then they want to remain out on bail and prove to the judge that you're rehabilitated and then get sentenced.
Right.
Such as Anthony Rotundo. I think Anthony did probably about 4 or 5 years in jail, and then he was out on bail for probably 10 years, and then he got sentenced.
Yeah, you're gonna get more on a 5K1 of a reduction because you're able to walk in front of the judge and this information led to this and this and that you can absolutely prove, as opposed to you go to jail and the U.S. attorney sends a letter in saying, oh, he deserves this because of like they could downplay it. If you're standing there in front of the judge and you can say, this is what happened, the judge is more likely to say, yeah, I'm gonna do this guy a solid. He clearly helped, with 14 different arrests and indictments and hundreds of years of, yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like the magic word you want to hear is time served, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like what happens is Ralph starts it, so he gets credit for everybody else that comes behind him.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're on the train first,
yeah,
everybody else that follows, you're going to get credit. So he got time served, and he got credit for everybody else, Anthony Capo and all those 7 people behind him. So just great stuff. But that's what you want. You want to have a voluminous 5K1 letter and then show that, okay, you did some time, then you got out of bail and you didn't get into any trouble at all. And then when you go in front of the judge says time served. So what's interesting too is since that time period, and we're at what, almost 25 years, no other made member has cooperated in that family since.
It doesn't sound like you left much of a family to cooperate anyway. It doesn't sound like many people skated.
Yeah, they tried to rebuild, but I don't think they have recovered since then. You know what I mean? But yeah, as I said, at the end of the day, 71 defendants convicted, 7 trials that we did, and they just did a great job.
You had mentioned that you had found, is it this case, you had found a body in the basement? Is that
no,
on this?
That's not this case.
Okay.
And where we ended, how this kind of ends too, is related to the Bonanno family. Just at the end of this case, related to the Bonanno family, there was 3 captains killed in 1981. They had an internal war, and during that time period, they killed them and buried them in Ozone Park. And back then, one of the 3 victims, their hand had popped up, and kids found that body. And unbeknownst to everybody else, there was 2 other bodies there. So, as I said, that side of the squad was doing a great job. They were really dismantling that family. We had gotten information, I think it was in September of 2004, I believe, when this case was starting to wrap up, and we did a dig over there because we had gotten information, and we were out there for 28 days. That's a long time, especially when you have bosses trying to breathe down your neck about, are we finding something, a lot of, press constantly, planes, choppers looking at you, constant press, and we were actually able to find the bodies that were killed and put there. during that time. So those are the first two that I found, right? With not just me, but the team that we had. I forget their names. Phil, it was Lucky, and Trinchachera, I think, was the other guy. Those village captains that were put there.
I feel like nobody named Lucky ends up in a
Yeah,
shallow grave.
I know, right? But it was difficult because the weather was bad, and it was like swampland.
Mhm.
So it would rain, and you would keep digging, and it was a vast type of area too. And every time that you would dig and it would rain, all the mud would push it back in. So we were out there for 28 days, and I said, thank God we knew the leadership of the office back then, because they would never allow you to be out there for that long, because it cost a lot of money to have the resources out there. But that was the first two bodies that I found, and that was just as this case started to wrap up.
Is there a specific individual that Tony Soprano's character is based on, or is it a composite? Sometimes they do a composite.
Okay, so there's many similarities between the show and the real family.
Okay.
We'll start with Tony, right? So Tony has a strip club. Vincent Palermo, who cooperated with the government, acting boss of the DeCavalcanti family, go figure, has a strip club in Queens. It was called Wiggles.
Wasn't the Bada Bing?
No.
No.
So even though the show depicts the strip club in New Jersey, ironically, Vincent has a strip club in Queens. So that's the first thing. Second of all, the show, the first season, the real boss dies of stomach cancer, right, in the show. I think it was Jackie Aprile was his name, was like the character. In real life, Jake Amari, the boss of the DeCavalcanti, the acting boss of the DeCavalcanti family, dies of stomach cancer in June of 1997.
Okay.
Ironic, right? Throughout the show, they talk about unions, right? You constantly see the unions where they're sitting on chairs outside the job sites.
No, they call them is it?
So there's a no-show job, right?
All right.
Where you don't have to go to the job,
Yeah.
right? There's a no-work job where you go and you don't have to do work.
Right.
In real life, the DeCavalcantis, that was their bread and butter. They controlled two unions. They controlled Local 394, which was the labor union, and they actually started a union called Local 1030, which was the asbestos union. They actually created a school. Anthony Capo had testified that he went to the school, and he testified during one of our trials that he wouldn't even know asbestos if he was sitting on it. And
Right.
he had a license, and he didn't even know asbestos if he was sitting on it. So that's pretty funny. But those are two unions that they actually controlled, and they made a lot of money from that. Now, they're supposed to be low profile, and John Riggi, the official boss, was low profile, but his successors weren't. They built these big houses, and as we just said there's all sorts of scams that they did, right? There's bid rigging, right? Also, back in the day, there was a thing called shaping up. What that meant was that you would actually have to go down to the union hall and wait in line to get a job. DeCavalcantis didn't have to do that. So you would show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and wait online to get a job. DeCavalcantis just went to the job whenever they had wanted to get a job.
All right.
So those are two things that they did, right? There's also, in the show, there is the stock angle, right? Where in real life, there was a guy named Philip Abramo, a DeCavalcanti captain. He was known as the Wizard of Wall Street. All the other families went to him because he was so smart and so successful. They have that in the show.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember the stock thing, and I remember thinking that's, doing a pump and dump scheme, like that's pretty sophisticated. That's more sophisticated than I typically think of as the mob. But
And
it was in the show.
He used to short stocks all the time. We actually had charges in our indictments related to stock fraud, where we charged him with that. He was very, very smart man. So they had the stocks, they had the gay angle, as we discussed before, where John D'Amato was actually killed because he was bringing his girlfriend to sex clubs in New York City. We all know in the show they had the same thing. So there's many similar things between real life and actually the show. The only thing I think which would not happen is I don't think a mob boss would be going to a shrink to divulge his secrets. I don't think that would actually happen.
Right.
Or I don't.
But that was also a big thing, was that he was constantly concerned about that. Like,
Right.
this is unheard of. Nobody could ever find out about that.
Right.
It's funny you say that. I asked ChatGPT, like, what are 10 questions to ask about this? And it said one of the questions is, would a real mob boss go to therapy to, reveal?
Yeah, secrets or discuss.
Yeah, I don't think that she would be around long if he did.
Yeah. There is one, at one point she actually goes like, I think she's like, I had to go on the lam. He's like, Tony's like, on the lam? Like, what are you what are you doing? Like, were you watching TV shows? Like, on the lam? How do you know what that means? But go ahead.
What are, if any, like some major differences that maybe the show kind of pumped up that never really happened, or exaggerated, if there's any?
Well, I think as you just said, they wouldn't go to a shrink to actually discuss that type of business. That's the main thing. Another similar thing that they had is the meat market. Now, I can't say the name of the meat market, but there is a meat market in New Jersey that they would go to all the time.
And just go sit down and
Yeah. There also was a club that they went to. It was called the Ribera Club. That was for members only. Like, I could not go into that.
Right.
I do remember we had prosecutors from Italy that came over that wanted to go see the area.
Right.
So me and my partner had to go bring them to that area. Now, again, I couldn't bring them into the Ribera Club, but I brought them across the street to a cafe that they had. And I'm not a big coffee drinker to begin with, but I did bring them in there. And it was like E.F. Hutton when I walked in there. It's like everybody just stopped and looked at us. Like, I'm an Irish American. So,
Right.
of course, I stood out. But we drank a really quick cup of coffee and got out of there as quick as we possibly could. But yeah, it was like E.F. Hutton. As soon as I walked in, everyone just stopped and looked at us. We were not welcome.
You keep mentioning the Italian prosecutors. Is there a component that of the, because look, to me, in my mind, is that these are Italian immigrants that came over in the 1900s, late 1800s, whatever, and they formed the mob or the mafia, different families, and this is kind of this internal thing that's running this kind of subculture, but it wasn't really until the Sopranos where they were dealing with factions of the mafia in Italy, where they're sending them cars or weapons or going back and forth. They're working with them. And I remember watching the show thinking, I doubt that they even know anybody in Italy anymore. After this long, I would think there would be a complete separation and there would be no real, international dealings with another faction of the mafia. But they would do it. I thought, it's good TV. But you keep mentioning prosecutors. Like, is this a real thing?
There's two things. A, the DeCavalcanti family originated from Ribera, Italy. The second thing is the FBI and the Italian authorities have a very good working relationship, and that's based upon when Judge Falcone was killed back in the 1990s. And so we've established a great relationship with them, and every May the FBI does go over to Italy to pay homage to the judge that was killed. So we have a great relationship with them, and we remain contact with them. So that's why it's an open communication with them.
So Judge Falcone is a famous judge in Italy that actually kind of signed warrants and rounded up a massive amount of mobsters and then put on a massive trial of all the mobsters. I mean, they were locked up in cages. Like, they're in the courtroom, this massive courtroom. They're locked up in cages, and they run a whole trial. And in the middle of the trial, or maybe after the trial, or maybe it was before the trial, I don't know. But while this is happening, he was the only one with the guts to do this in Italy. And they put a hit out on him, and he's like driving. They actually plant bombs in a section of the interstate where he's driving through because he's got protection. They can't get to him. And they said, you know what? Let's blow up the entire interstate while he's on it. So as he's driving, they hit the button and it just blows up and it kills him. And it was like, like he's the only guy that had the guts to do this. And then they kill him, which made it only worse for them. Exactly. Right? Because now it aligned everybody who had any sympathy for the mafia in Italy at all. They said, oh no, we're done.
Exactly.
Like, you killed him and a bunch of other people, and he's just following the law and trying to break up this organization that's plaguing our society. But yeah, Falcone. I read a book about a guy who was an FBI agent that went undercover, and he took the name Falcone in honor of Judge Falcone. And so whenever he would be introduced, they'd say, you're no relation to. He'd go, of course not, of course not.
And who's that?
Who that?
Who is the agent?
I don't know, but the book was like becoming Tony Falcone or Anthony Falcone. That was it. I remember the name of the book. Do you?
Making Jack Falcone, an undercover FBI agent, takes down a mafia family.
That's
Who's the FBI agent?
Joaquin Jack Garcia.
yeah, Jack Garcia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that book in
Yeah.
prison.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
That was a great book.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he explained that. That's the only reason I kind of know
He's
that.
Cuban.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought I feel like, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like it was like they pulled him out at the last minute. They were going to make there was a possibility, or maybe it was a done deal where they were actually going to like make him a made member, and then for some reason they just pulled him out at the last minute.
Yeah.
Great book though, but he talks about all the things of all the things that he had to learn so that he didn't look odd, like there were little tiny odd things.
And you would never guess he's an agent.
Yeah,
He's a big guy.
Yeah.
Really big guy.
But they talk about how he basically got like a crash course from a bunch of guys that had cooperated, and they explain like how they hold their money. They would go and they actually would. It was like you actually go to the supermarket, and where they would have like broccoli, you pull the thick rubber bands off the broccoli, and that's what you use to wrap your money. And you always have like the 1 or like the 50, the largest bill on the outside, whatever it was. There's all these little things that they were like, look, if you don't do it like this, they're going to know. And he was like, are you serious? Like, why can't I keep it in my billfold? Absolutely not.
Yep.
We would never do that. So, yeah, great book though. So anyway, so it's not like this organization stretches or spans
Not really, no.
the Atlantic.
Yeah.
It's just that this is just you guys are kind of working together to kind of hone your skills and show homage to.
So the main character in the series, he's based off a real person, or is it kind of like a mixture of both?
It's a mixture, but I would portray him as Vincent Palermo
Okay.
because of the strip club, because of the business angle, because Vinny had lots of the businesses. That's what he had.
Right.
So
Yeah, they've got, and it shows how they're into like the waste management and like Tony Soprano, or he's got like an office that he never goes to.
Right.
And then one day he starts showing up, and the guy that's running the whole thing is like, what's going on? Like, what? He's like, I'm trying to keep a low profile. I need my lawyer kind of tells me I need to start coming here. But he didn't do anything. I think he ends up starting to like bang one of the fucking chicks that's there or something. He's always cheating on his wife. He's always got a mistress that's causing problems. And he's in the Sopranos. He's got like a nephew. I want to say, is it Christopher?
Christopher. Yeah. Right.
Who's got a girlfriend that he's with all the time,
Right.
and she ends up cooperating.
Yep.
And they end up having to kill her.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a horrific episode. You got to watch it. Colby, I'm just so listen, I get more and more, I was so impressed with this guy for so long. And I get so disappointed. Like, sometimes it's like, you've never seen the Sopranos. You have to
watch. Sopranos got to watch. He has to watch the movie Goodfellas.
The Sopranos. Even another great one, which just came on Netflix, by the way. It's free. It's on Netflix. We probably have Netflix anyway. Is Casino. Casino's great. And Casino's great because there are great correlations where like that's a real character. That's a real character. These guys got murdered in the cornfield.
Yep.
I don't know if it was exactly. I think they actually killed him somewhere else and they buried him. But it's a very similar style murder. Like when you watch it, you're like, oh, this is horrible. It's a horrific. It's probably, that really may be one of the most horrific murder scenes probably I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because these guys are just begging.
We talked about it on an episode, and I had to blur. I couldn't even really put it in.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Where they've already got they've got the holes dug. Or do they dig them afterwards? I don't know. But they're in the middle of a cornfield, and then they just beat these guys to death with baseball bats. It's horrible. But that's a real thing. These are real guys. And the guy the character is a real person that you also, it's great because they show what problems these guys are. Like these are not, like businessmen that happen to be, their business happens to be crime related. Like these guys have mental problems. These guys have anger management issues beyond belief, and it's insanity. But yeah, so yeah, there's some great mob movies out there that the Godfather movies.
I watched the first one.
Yeah. No, the more realistic ones are like the Sopranos, Goodfellas, and Casino. I always love in Goodfellas they bring the guy to the Tampa Zoo. They call it the Tampa Zoo, which is it wasn't even the Tampa Zoo then. It's called the Lowry Park Zoo, but now I think they call it the Tampa Zoo. But yeah, they take him and they're going to throw him over into the lions, and they're like, this guy flipped out. Like, I mean, they must really feed people to the lions down there. And they were holding him by his legs, and he's freaking out. But it's funny too, because like that's how they all get busted. Like he calls his sister, and his sister happens to be like a secretary for the FBI, and she blows the whole thing wide. That's how he ends up getting arrested towards the end of the movie.
Did we ever cover? I know we talked about it real briefly. The court reporter, how they found out that the FBI was coming that day. Like you just had mentioned it. Was there a reason? Was there a
We
way?
don't have too much information because we can talk about it here a little bit.
Yeah.
But, so what happens is they disclose that we have a leak, right? And that they got the information from a Genovese captain named Fritzi Giovanelli.
Right.
But we don't know who's providing the information to him. So we can only arrest him.
Right.
Where we allege that it's someone within the Southern District. We think it's a court reporter, and we think it's a female. We just don't have the evidence to charge her.
Oh, and he doesn't cooperate.
He doesn't cooperate. So he is another trial that we have. And he goes to trial, and we actually end up convicting him, and he gets sentenced to 10 years. But he does not cooperate. He was a longstanding member of that family. But we don't have enough information to actually charge the court reporter, who we believe it is, because our witnesses never had direct interaction with that person. We just had our witnesses just had direct interaction with Fritzi.
So who is you'll probably know exactly who is it. The guy they call him the Chin. He walked around in a robe for a decade.
So that's the same family, and he was the boss of that family. So Vincent the Chin Gigante.
Right. So one of his underbosses, I think, was, and I want to say his last name was like Lim or Lamb or something. He was in the cell directly across from me.
Oh, really?
And these guys, they come to prison, and they, it's funny. I used to always say that prison is the great equalizer, right? Like it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or you're completely broke. You can still only spend so much every month. You still live. You're still in a cell across the wall of the walkway from a crackhead, And he was there, and he was only there for maybe a year and a half, and then he got released. So what had happened was he had ended up taking a plea, and he took a plea. And he owned a ton of stocks. And the FBI made him sell everything he had. For some reason, he couldn't be owner of I forget what it was, but he sold a bunch of stuff. So he sells a bunch of stuff, and he said, and he goes, thank God they had me sell it. It's like I ended up having to sell it at the high end, and then the stock market had crashed practically or dropped. He said it saved me a couple $1 million. But he ended up first, I forget the first case was that he pled guilty for like 5 years. And just as it was wrapping up, they re-indicted him for like tax evasion. And then he got another 4 years or something. And he was just like, it was just killing him. But he ended up getting moved to the low. He was across from me for maybe a year or so. And what these guys do is they just put money on other people's books.
Right.
They just find somebody else who's broke in the unit and say, look, here's what I'll do. I'll put, do you call your family? Do you this? They'll make deals with guys like, hey, if you don't call, I called nobody. Okay, well then I'll put $500 a month on your books. You'll buy $360 worth of commissary every month, and I'll pay. You get 180, I get 180, or whatever. They give them $50 worth themselves. Of course, these guys are thrilled, and they get money for the phone. They put money on the phone, but I get to use your phone because you don't call anybody anyway, and they're thrilled. And they'll do that with 3 different guys. Like they'll be on the phone all day long, and you're like, "How is this happening? Like, how are you?" Because you can typically only you get about 300 minutes a month, which means you can make you can make a 15-minute phone call, but basically it breaks up to about 10 minutes a day. Now you could get on the phone and call all day long, but you're out within 2 days. You're out of minutes, and really you have to wait typically an hour between calls, and every institution is different. So he would do this, but he has somebody cleaning his room, making his bed, doing all his laundry. He was living like as good as you could live. He lived. Much older guy, probably in his late 60s. And he was funny because he just liked me for some reason. I guess he had talked to a few other people and they were like, "Oh, he did a real estate this and here's what he did." And then one day he asked me, "I understand you do this." And listen, what's great about these guys too is that you see the kind of the stereotypical Italians in the movies, and you think, "Wow, they're probably not like that." They're exactly like that. They do the whole, "I told fucking Vinny, you meet me at the table at 11 o'clock. You better fucking be," and that's exactly. And you're like, "This is you almost can't take them serious when they first start talking." You're like, "Come on, man, seriously, this is a joke, right?" And then they would all get together. So sometimes there'd be like 8 or 9 of them, and they're all old guys. They'd get together. And keep in mind, I say old guys. They were in their 60s and 70s when I was in my 40s. But they would get together, and then they would be thick as thieves for 2 months, and then suddenly you'd notice there'd be 2 different groups of them. These 4 guys no longer talk to these 5 guys.
Really?
With and these are all different. They're different families, but when in prison they're all together because they're all kind of they're all mafia. Yeah. But then sometimes they'd have an issue. Some of these guys' sons wouldn't talk to each other. Like, you're in the same prison. You're in the same unit. You don't talk to your son. "Fuck that fucking piece of garbage." And you're like, "What are you?" Because he's just said something. Something stupid. And they don't talk to each other for 4 years. They're like, "You haven't talked to the guy in 4 years."
And you're in prison.
You're in prison. And he's your son. And he's in the same unit because,
makes no sense.
But they were, the one guy was hilarious. And he had told me a story one time that, and you've heard me tell this story, right? He's an older guy. He said, "Never been arrested." He said, "I've only been arrested 1 time." And I was like, "What?" He said, "1 time." He said, he was at somebody's somebody's house. His wife calls because one day the state police encircled the house and they're telling him to come outside, and his wife comes out and he's like, "He's not here." And so she calls somebody, and they call him, whatever the case may be, and he's told, "Hey, she's like," he calls, and they're surrounded, they're outside, they've got a bullhorn, they're telling him to come outside, and so he calls his lawyer calls the state police, says he'll turn himself in tomorrow morning. They go in the next morning, he gets arrested, processed, released the same day. And and I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "But they ended up dropping the charges." And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, he said, I own a construction company." Of course. Right. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He said, "And one of the supervisors at the construction company had lent money to somebody. Has nothing to do with me." Okay. He said, "Well, he ends up going to that guy, and he's telling the guy, like, you got to give me the money. And the guy, he's not coming up with the money. He's gambling and whatever." Okay. So it sounds to me like one of your guys is running a loan sharking operation out of your construction company. And so he ends up saying, he tries to collect a few times, and the guy who owes the $20,000 or $50,000, I don't know how much it was, but he owes the money. He can't come up with the money. He gets scared. And so he goes to the local police and says, "Look, I owe $30,000. I can't pay. These guys are going to kill me. They're going to hurt me. They're going to break my whatever." So they put a wire on him. And then one day and they watch him for the day, and the guy shows up for the money, and he's able to give him a little bit of money or something along those lines. Right. So he doesn't get hurt that day because they can't watch him get hurt.
Right.
And so, but they get the interaction, and the interaction is that if you don't come up with the money by Friday, or at least the VIG or whatever it is,
right.
You're going to get hurt. you're lucky I haven't told Anthony about this yet. If Anthony knew, you'd be dead right now. Something along those lines. Well, he's Anthony. Whatever his name was. I forget his first name, but it was something Lim or Lamb or something like that. Anyway, so he tells him that. He says, these motherfuckers, they go out and they get an indictment. They get an arrest warrant. What do they come to arrest me? They think they got me. My wife calls. I turn myself in. Then they're going to do a trial. And he's like, and so, I'm going to go to trial. And he said, and then, just before they end up dropping, they drop all the charges. And I went, really? I said, why did they drop the charges? He said, the guy, the witness guy, he had like some kind of accident or something, and he couldn't testify. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, what kind of accident did he have? And he goes, I don't know. He said I know they found him in one of them garbage trucks. They found him in the. And I go, well, was he a garbage man? No, he was not a garbage man. No. And I went, did he fall in the truck? And I've talked to him for 6 months now. We've had a lot of conversations, and he likes me, and he's always like, hey, Cox, try this. He's always making food and platters. They make things, they pass it out, and I'm like, did he fall in there? He's like, no, I don't know. I don't know. I said, that seems like a strange accident. Like if he was a garbage man, I could see him having the accident. He's a garbage man. He fell in. He got crushed. I get it. I said, that seems like a strange accident. He goes, you testify against people. He said, people tend to have accidents. They have accidents. I said, I understand. I said, same way in the banking industry. Bankers are always having accidents that are cooperating. He's like, and that was it. But it's in that one day he was on the pack out and he left. But he was so funny because these guys would be eating. And at this point, I was reading these Stuart Woods novels. And he's got his main guy is Stone Barrington. You ever? Yeah. They're horrible, but don't read them. But one of the things they always talked about was a restaurant or something called like Elaine's, and supposedly Elaine's is a real restaurant somewhere in New York,
Upper East Side.
Okay, so one day I'm walking in the line, and we're coming up on the Italian's table, and he turns to me and he says, "Oh no, I'm eating." And they're walking in line. A group of them are walking in line together to get, pizza or whatever we were having that day. And he says, or they'd have spaghetti day. And they're walking. And he goes, hey, Cox, is this any good? And I go, just like back at Elaine's. Like that, and they just roar laughing. And I have a buddy named Nico, and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing? Don't fuck around. Don't joke. Don't fuck these. Don't mock these guys." I go, "No, I'm just joking." I said, I know him." He's like, "Dude, you're gonna get fucking hurt. What are you doing?" Like, they're 70 years old. They're not hurting anybody. But they were just straight out of Central Casting. Yep, they were exactly. They behave none of them behaved any differently. Oh, and one of the guys that was there. If I was Wade would know. Wade would know these names. One of the guys was rumored to have been one of the guys that was with John Gotti when they killed the boss. Like, he's one of the guys.
Castellano?
Castellano. When they killed Castellano, had the Russian hat on, ran up. And these guys are tiny, by the way. They're like 5'5", 5'6". They're short, little, chubby guys. But he was supposedly, everybody would say, when Castellano got, there's like 5 guys that killed him, 4 guys. He's like, he's one of them. Is that true? I don't know. Yeah. But suppose that was his kind of, what he was supposedly famous for. What ultimately ended up happening with Anthony?
All right. So Anthony, as I said, he testified for me 7 times. And then after that year of trials, we rewarded him by trying to give him bail. So he got bail December of 2003, I believe.
So he was locked up this whole time?
Oh, yeah. He did 4 years in jail, and then he finally got bail. And he went into the witness security program. As I said, that's called phase 2 of the program. Phase 1, he was in jail. And everyone thinks that, okay, the witness security program, you go into a new life. No, there's certain jails within the states. There's 7 facilities within the states. And he was in one of those facilities. I can't say where those facilities are, but that's phase 1. So that's the first part of the witness security program. Then phase 2, you have an option. You can either go into the witness security program where you get your new identification, or you can, if you have a common name like John Smith, you just go into phase 2 of not going into getting new ID. You go off on your own. So he decided to go into phase 2 of getting new ID, and that's what he did. He went into that there and he stayed there for many years. He became a car salesman. I used to say that he could sell steam shit to a blind man because he had the gift of gab.
Right.
So he did that, and he always said to me that he wanted to be a success story for me. And I always just say to him, don't be a success story for me, be a success story for yourself. He went into the witness security program by himself, though. His family did not join him. So, as I said, him and his wife were now divorced, and his kids stayed with the wife. And he did that for many years. And as I said, a good way to try to get time served is to stay on bail for many years before you're sentenced. And if I remember correctly, he was going to be sentenced in 2012. And unfortunately, right before he was going to be sentenced, he actually passed away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was waked in Staten Island. They brought him back here, and I just thought it was the right thing to do. The marshals had called me and told me when someone is in the witness security program and they call, there's a certain row of numbers that show up that I know someone from the program is calling me. And they called and they told me that he passed away. And then I actually spoke to his mom, and I said, would it be all right if I came to the wake? Just thought it was the right thing to do because, we had developed a bond over those years. And I went to the wake to pay my respects. I just thought it was the right thing to do. So I met his wife, who I hadn't seen in years, and his mom and his sister and the brother, and paid my respects. So I did the right thing. And then, people ask me, why did I write the book? And one of the reasons that I had mentioned there before was we had a very historic squad, this C10, where for probably 6 or 7 years we were almost in the paper every day, and the press really never put it together that it was the same squad. Where we basically dismantled 2 families at the same time. And I was approached. I've been very blessed to have a great career. Again, it's never just me. I'm a big proponent of teamwork, great partners, supervisors, mentors. And when I was approached and they heard my story, they basically said this should be 2 books. This book was supposed to be just a couple of chapters, but when they heard the whole thing, they said it should be 2 books. This is just the first part, so we'll see if there's a second part. But more importantly is I'm not too sure of the relationship that Anthony had with his kids, but hopefully by writing this book that his children actually see that he did do a lot of good. Yes, he did do heinous crimes, and I never condone those crimes whatsoever. The victims, I really do feel bad for them. But hopefully his family and his children actually do see that he did do a lot of good when he did help the government, because he did help dismantle the family.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, if you want to buy Seamus's book, it's called Flipping Capo, and we're going to leave the link, the Amazon link, in the description box so you can click on the link. It'll shoot you right there. You can order the book. Soon to be option for a major motion picture. Listen, once again, I really do appreciate you guys watching. If you want to be a guest on the show, go to our link. It will also be in the description box. You can click on it, go there, fill out an application, and we will get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you very much. See ya.